lovers, it is GSwiz here, and I'm here today to talk about the fantasy manga that is currently on my TBR. Actually wanted to do this video for a while. Actually, initially, this video was going to be about romance manga. But then I noticed as I was compiling a list of romance manga that was on my TBR, majority of them were fantasies, and there were other fantasies that I wanted to include that weren't just classified in the romance category. So I decided to switch this up, and eventually I might do a romance manga TBR, but for now, I think I'm very much satisfied with doing a fantasy manga TBR because I feel as if I really want to get into more fantasy manga. I have been struggling very recently with my romantasy reading habits, but I'm hoping that eventually I can make the transition back into reading romantasy by trying out some fantasy manga. I do have to admit, some of the series that are on this TBR I don't really know much about, but there are some that I do want to pick up based on some recommendations that some people have given, comp titles, popularity, all that stuff etc. There are also some TBR picks on this list today that I have already watched the anime adaptation of, and I want to proceed to read the manga. So I guess without further ado, let's get straight into this list today. I'm really excited to share these with you. I'm gonna start off with a bunch of fantasy manga I have mentioned previously on my channel that I have included in manga TBR videos. I do want to talk about them in depth, but I have talked about them in depth previously and I don't want to be too repetitive, so I'll quickly shout them out before going into detail about some of the other manga series that I have not yet mentioned on my channel yet, or I don't mention on my channel as often, that I do want to get to. And those picks consist of this stack right here. So firstly, I do want to mention Witch Hat Atelier. I have mentioned this previously on my channel. I really do want to get to this one because this one was a recommendation from my husband and it is one of his favorite mangas of all time. I don't have much more to say about it because I don't really know much about it. But at the moment, I am enjoying another Harry Potter parody series. I mean, this technically I don't think is a Harry Potter parody series like Mashal is, but eventually I do want to get to this one, and I believe that this one has a bit more depth than Mashal. So I do want to read about some sort of wizarding school that does have a bit more character depth and development. Prince Freya. I have mentioned this on my channel a few times. This one is giving me King's Beast vibes, but without creatures, I believe. I don't know if we have any hybrid creatures, like we have animal-human hybrids in the King's Beast. I don't know if we have any kind of mythical creatures in here, but I do know that this is a high fantasy that is kind of based on the Mulan concept, and I'm very much looking forward to checking this one out eventually. I've just talked about this one on my channel many times, including it on TBRs, but I have not gotten to it yet, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail here. And I've also previously mentioned that I do want to get to Mao. I've actually read the first chapter of Mao, and I enjoyed it, but I did not continue from there. And I also want to give a special shout out to Inuyasha. I have started that series. I've read one volume and I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to continue on with that series, but I really want to continue on with Mao as well. I just really love the way that Rumiko Takahashi is able to write a story so far from what I've read, so I don't doubt that this one is going to be a very good time. The Midnight Secretary. This one's more of a paranormal-esque romance. I believe that this might be a lot more contemporary-like. It might be just dark fantasy in general. I have mentioned this one previously on my most recent manga TBR video. I can't wait to get to it. It just looks like it's going to be a very fun time, and it's only a 7-volume commitment, so what more could I want, honestly? Actually, I do love committing to long series. Sometimes I think I will especially love committing to Yona of the Dawn. I am so looking forward to starting this series, but I know it's probably gonna break my heart. I hear that at the moment it's very intense, and I just know that once I get into it, I'm gonna be fully immersed. I really wanted to read Yona of the Dawn ever since I found out that From Blood and Ash was potentially inspired by Yona of the Dawn. Ever since From Blood and Ash took off on the internet, some people were like, did you guys notice that it has a few similarities to Yona of the Dawn? And oh my goodness, I'm just so excited to see those parallels, but also I'm very much looking forward to see how this story goes deeper, because apparently it does. And right now there are 41 volumes out as I'm filming this video. I'm really looking forward to the story, but for now I'm composing myself. I'm getting myself ready to eventually embrace the fact that I might just be heartbroken by the series. We'll see how we go. I hope I survive Yona of the Dawn. And now I'm going to talk about some fantasy manga TBR picks that I don't believe I've gone into detail previously, but I do want to read these. Some of these I don't really know much about, but once again, as I mentioned previously, for me, it came down to comps or maybe cover buys. You'll see. As we go through this list, we will see. I'm going to start off with a few that I don't physically own yet, and then I'm going to go into a physical TBR. I'm gonna kick this off with the Ancient Magus's Bride. I have a bad habit of pronouncing it the Ancient Magus Bride. I really don't know the pronunciation. I think that it could go either way, just like Studio Ghibli and Ghibli. It really depends on my mood on the day. Okay, so this one. Why do I have it on my TBR? Purely because when I got into The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, almost everyone was comparing that series to this series. And as soon as I found out that The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts was a comp title for The Ancient Magus's Bride, that's when I knew that I really wanted to read this manga, and I am so looking forward to watching the anime. But it's one of those situations, right, where I feel as if once I start watching the anime, it will completely consume my life. And I feel as if that's the case because I recently experienced that with The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. And look, it's not necessarily a completely similar situation considering that The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts is only a 1-season run. Like, it's not going to continue beyond that because the entire first season actually covers the entirety of the manga series, so we're good there. And in terms of the Ancient Magus's Bride, this series I believe will be going on for multiple seasons. It actually also got nominated for Best Fantasy in the Crunchyroll Awards, which also very much motivated me to eventually want to read the series and to watch it, but I just know that with all the cliffhangers I might just struggle. We will see. I see the series at a very high price point usually, so I am nervous about that. I never usually see it discounted every single time I go on to the internet to purchase it. Whereas with like some other series that I will be mentioning later, I usually see them at a much cheaper price point, and I think that comes down to importation. I don't know if the series is very much in demand here in Australia, but I really want to pick the box set up. I really want to collect the series so that I can binge it, but if I don't do that, I might just binge watch the anime, but I also don't want to be left on a cliffhanger. That is the worst. Right now, I have conflicting feelings about this. I know that I could start the series any day, but I think the idea of starting the series reminds me of the idea of starting a good romantasy series that is not finished yet. It's so funny, right? I'm reading so many ongoing series, but for some reason, I have high expectations for this series in particular because it has been comped to one of my current favorite anime series ever. I've definitely put it on my TBR. I definitely want to get to it, but I'm intimidated at the moment to start the anime because I'm not ready to be left on a cliffhanger, and I at the moment am watching my spending when it comes to the manga series. I'm trying to see if I can get a good deal. I don't know. We will see. Eventually, I do want to get to the series though. That's why it's on this list, obviously. Okay, another fantasy manga that I do want to read so badly is a manga series that I watched the anime adaptation for. In fact, I believe that this series also has a light novel. Some of these fantasy stories also already have light novels, but I prefer to collect them in manga form. I think because I just want to keep the consistency on my shelves with the manga. And also, I love the art styles. But I absolutely adored the first season of this anime adaptation, and that, my friends, is My Happy Marriage. This series was inspired by Cinderella, and it's so beautiful. The anime made me cry so much. It made me confront my inner demons. Thinking about the story makes me want to sob. And the anime adaptation is very well done. I know that the manga series could destroy me. I still have not picked the physical copies up yet, but I'm very much looking forward to getting to the series eventually. I very much do want to continue on with this love story, and I also specifically want to purchase this manga as a beautiful keepsake because season 1 of the anime adaptation has got to be one of my favorite anime seasons I've ever watched ever. I honestly don't know if an anime has ever moved me that much. I absolutely adore the series. I highly recommend it to those who are wanting to experience a very beautiful rags to riches story. And the last series out of the manga that I currently don't actually own on my physical TBR that I do want to get to eventually, and I think this is purely based on popularity, is the Apothecary Diaries. Okay, this is something you need to know in advance. Everyone struggles with a different word in their vocab, right? Apothecary is the word I struggle to pronounce. It's terrible. So whenever I want to talk about the series or the fact that I want to read the series, I always get caught up on this one word. And I think it's because I confuse apothecary with apocrypha, because I used to work at a Christian bookstore and we would sell the apocrypha all the time. So I pronounce the apothecary, I pronounce it as apocryphary. A lot, okay? A lot. I always confuse the two words when I am not thinking about it, okay? So if at any point on my channel I pronounce apothecary apocryphary, that is why. This word is my Achilles heel. I do want to read this manga purely because popularity. I mean, I'm just hearing great things about the anime. At the time that I'm filming this video, I've actually not watched the anime yet. I am so looking forward to. I think it's a similar situation to the Ancient Magus's Bride, right? I just know that once I start watching the anime, I know it's gonna consume me. So excited for it though. Thankfully, the entire first season is done, so I can eventually binge watch it. But also part of me is wanting to wait until I read the manga, which I need to stop doing that, right? Like, you know, it's a terrible habit, especially if I don't own the manga and if I'm not planning to buy it like immediately. I do want to purchase this one, but I'm just budgeting at the moment. I'm definitely planning to purchase this series within this next year period, I would say. But yeah, I think in this case, I might just watch the anime first to make my mind up about this one. But this one is very popular. Like, it's in the top 50 on my anime list, which is very impressive because the top 50 on my anime list is usually very strong. It's very solid. So that is how I know that this one is really good. I also hear that it has very similar vibes to My Happy Marriage. It's not the same concept from what I know, but it has very similar vibes. Every single time I watch Gaunt talk about this on his channel, Gaunt being Gaunt from Gigok, one of my favorite anitubers out there, he often says it's pretty much Dr. House, but in anime form. That sounds exciting, I guess. And speaking of recent anime adaptations, I also placed The Witch and the Beast on my TBR, and this one was purely because of the title, right? It resembles Beauty and the Beast. Am I right? Yeah, you're probably gonna see a pattern in the manga that I would like to pick up based on the fact that I really like fairy tales. And there are a lot of fairy tale reimaginings on this like one TBR. I don't actually know if this is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining. Hello everyone, jumping in here. So I filmed this video a while ago, and at the time I had not watched The Witch and the Beast anime adaptation, and I have. And while I was talking about The Witch and the Beast in my initial take, I was coming from the angle that I assumed that it was going to be a fantasy romance, and that is not the case. So I've cut that footage out to say that this is actually a seinen series, and it's quite fascinating. It does take a while to get into. I still have not started the manga as I'm filming this, and that is why I'm keeping this title in my TBR specifically, because I do actually want to continue on with the series. It actually starts off with a series of short stories and then proceeds to go into the main character's backstory. So we're actually following a protagonist, a beastly protagonist, who is cursed and was cursed by a witch, and they want revenge. So they just want to hunt witches down. But the only way that they can fully unlock their true power is to kiss a witch, and it temporarily comes out. It's very interesting. That part of it kind of reminds me of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with the stands, but I'd say overall the series kind of reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist so far. It's definitely not the same as Full Metal Alchemist, but I'd say if there's a series that I've consumed previously that the series reminds me of, it's probably Full Metal Alchemist. I haven't really watched many dark magic series previously, and I have not read many dark magic series in manga, so I'm actually very much excited to try this one out. But yeah, that is what I've got to say based on me finally watching the anime adaptation. Anyway, moving on to Past G-Swizz again. And there are so many kind of beasts I like to read about, including vampires. And right here I have Vampire Dormitory, which is also gonna come out with an anime adaptation. I'm very much looking forward to watching the anime adaptation. I actually did not purchase this series because I want to read it in the lead up to the anime adaptation. I pretty much wanted to collect this series because I noticed the color scheme on the spines, and I was like, you know what, that is an aesthetically pleasing series, and it's about vampires. I also think another thing that contributed to me wanting to collect this series was the fact that I was in the middle of reading Rosenblood, and I was really enjoying Rosenblood as a guilty pleasure, and I wanted to read more vampiric manga. I still personally have not yet read many vampiric manga series. There are many vampiric manga series that I do want to get to eventually. I know a lot of people have been recommending me Vampire Knight. I do want to read that series. Eventually I might just buy the box set that has recently been announced. But I need to focus on the manga that's on my TBR, I know. But I've also heard really good things about Vampire Dormitory, and I do recall there being some buzz and hype around the series as volumes 1 to 4 were coming out. Now we're like 10 plus volumes in. I'm looking forward to binge reading this one eventually. I know that this is going to be a very good guilty pleasure read. This might help me with my Midnight Secretary withdrawals. I'm looking forward to getting to Midnight Secretary, and I think I want to prioritize Midnight Secretary. But if I'm experiencing some sort of hangover from reading that series, and if I want something that will help me during that period, I might just go straight to Vampire Dormitory. And another manga fantasy series that I put on my TBR purely because I love the cover and I also love the concept is In the Name of the Mermaid Princess. As soon as I saw Viz announce this on their Facebook page, I knew it had to be mine. Like, look at this cover. Take a second to just marvel upon this glory. It is gorgeous. This has got to be one of the most beautiful manga covers I've ever seen. I don't know if I've ever seen a more beautiful cover. Honestly, it's adorable. I love it. So I believe that this is a reimagining of The Little Mermaid, but instead of the Little Mermaid character, the protagonist, wanting to become human and go on land, she's reluctant to do that. She actually just wants to stay a mermaid, but she's betrothed to a prince on land. And I love that concept, honestly, because as much as I do appreciate the concept of The Little Mermaid, I do like a little reverse situation, you know? I mean, she's happy to be where she is, and she does not want to sacrifice what she is in order to appease other people, from what I've gathered. I am so looking forward to this story. It just sounds like it's gonna be a very empowering one, but we will see. I mean, I don't actually know. But also, something that really captivated me was the fact that all the covers in the series are absolutely beautiful. If you go onto the series Goodreads page for In the Name of the Mermaid Princess, you will see how stunning the rest of the series looks. I'm so looking forward to collecting the rest of the series, but I really want to enjoy this story for what it is. And as I mentioned previously, I do love myself a good fairy tale reimagining, but I like this twist specifically on The Little Mermaid. And I also very much appreciate the art style that I'm seeing so far. Yeah, it just looks absolutely adorable. I cannot wait. And another water-based fantasy that I do want to read eventually is The Water Dragon's Bride by Ray Toma. Now, if the name Ray Toma sounds familiar to you, it is because Ray Toma is also the mangaka of The King's Beast and Dawn of the Arcana. And honestly, as a King's Beast fan, I am so pumped to read the rest of Ray Toma's works. The tricky thing with this series, right? I have all volumes on my shelves, but 2. Everywhere I go, I cannot find volumes 3 and 4, and it is sad. I have them on my Amazon wish list, and there's no option to buy them unless of course it's for secondhand. I go onto booko.com and I'm seeing volume 4 at like, I don't know, a couple of $100, because from what I've gathered, the volumes are slowly going out of print, and it is devastating me because I really want to read this series. Like, I really want to read the series, and maybe I can find some way of reading it online. It might be on viz.com, but I usually find it handier to have the physical copy so that I can read it on my offline time. I usually spend my offline time reading a bunch of manga, and I really love having the physical manga handy because I'm able to read a few volumes at once, and for me it's just convenience, honestly. I could find a way of reading the other 2 volumes online, but it still kind of makes me feel discouraged because maybe I might just read those 2 volumes online and be even more depressed that I don't have them on my physical TBR. So that's another reason why I'm discouraged from reading the series. I know, it's terrible. I know. There are so many people that get by reading manga or webtoons online, and I'm just not one of those people. Like, I really wish I was one of those people. I gave up on keeping up with Chainsaw Man. That's how bad I am. I know. Maybe one day I might just suck it up and do it. But that is currently the reason why I have not yet picked this series up, and I've wanted to read this series for at least the last couple of years. Like, ever since I started reading The King's Beast, I wanted to read more by Ray Toma, and I really want to read the series. It's only an 11 volume commitment, but I'm missing 2 volumes at the moment, and those 2 volumes are fairly early in the story. I could start the series and who knows, maybe like miss the last 2 volumes and I'd be fine with it for the time being, but because it's volumes 3 and 4 we're talking about, I don't know, it's making me stressy. So that's how I feel at the moment. I can't wait to get to the series eventually. I have hope that one day I will see volumes 3 and 4 somewhere where I can purchase them too at the recommended retail price, and they can be in my collection. Because yeah, paying a few $100s for a manga volume, that sounds a little pricey, especially when I have not yet read the series, you know? And last but certainly not least, the final fantasy manga that I have to talk about that is on my TBR today also inspired me to make this video, because initially, as I mentioned, I did want to make this video a romance manga TBR. But this manga series is not specifically a fantasy romance manga. It does have a romantic subplot that is a slow burn, and I'm appreciating it so far because I have watched the anime adaptation. But it is a fantasy manga that I really do want to read eventually. I have not started it for similar reasons to The Water Dragon's Bride, except we're not talking about it being out of print because it's very much on demand, and that's the problem. And that, my friends, is Frieren. Beyond Journey's End. As soon as I saw the first volume of Frieren in bookstores back in the day, I was thinking, that story, I don't think I would like. And I think it's because I was going through a really bad isekai burnout. And this series is not isekai, but I was going through a really bad isekai burnout, I think because I was disappointed in some of the series that I was starting. In fact, you know what? I at first thought to myself that I did not want to read any fantasy manga because I thought that every fantasy manga would be like an isekai. And that's terrible, right? I feel as if isekai makes a lot of noise in the anime community. An example being Rise of the Shield Hero, right? That series personally disappointed me. I was enjoying it to start off with, but I eventually got disappointed and I was burnt out on the series. And for some reason, that led me to believe that all fantasy manga series out there were like the isekais that I had experienced, or like the isekais that everyone was pretty much like screaming about at the time. It's just a genre that makes a lot of noise within the anime and manga community, which I get. I can understand why it makes a lot of noise. But for some reason, when I saw the first volume of Frieren being advertised, I thought that sounds cool, that kind of looks cool, but I'm afraid to get burnt out because I feel as if it's every kind of fantasy that I've experienced within anime so far. Not manga, anime, because I had not read much fantasy manga at the time. That is initially what I thought as soon as I saw Frieren. I thought, that's just gonna be like everything, right? Years later, to my surprise, Frieren is #1 on my anime list. The anime took off. It beat Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And I recently watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I fell in love. It's one of my favorite animes of all time. I thought to myself, how? How could it have done this? I don't understand. And then I started watching Frieren, and I knew exactly why. Frieren Beyond Journey's End is a masterpiece. It is beautiful. It is magnificent. And now the manga series is so on demand that I do not have volumes 1 and 3 on my shelves as of yet. And I could purchase volume 1, but I am noticing that every single time I want to purchase it, it is marked up to the US imported price. So instead of the Viz recommended retail price, volume 1 is selling for like 23 Australian dollars, but I'm waiting to purchase it at recommended retail price before proceeding. I know, yeah, once again, ridiculous. I've seen volume 1 at Kinokuniya, and I'm not touching it at the moment as I'm filming this right now. I mean, maybe by the time that this video goes up, I will have the entirety of Frieren, but right now I have volume 2 and then 4 onward, because volume 1 is in demand. It's wild, I know, but I'm very much looking forward to reading this series. I'm not in a rush to read it though, because I've recently completed the first season of the anime, and I believe that that covers a lot of ground. Right now, I'm not necessarily in a rush to purchase volumes 1 and 3 and then actually continue reading the series. It is a comfort series. I am very much looking forward to reading it eventually. I definitely will. And I might read it somewhere later down the line, you know, when I'm experiencing some rainy day reading slump, like it's really bad and I'm wanting to get back into fantasy. This series is perfect for those who love fantasy or who are wanting to get into fantasy. It's very cozy, it's very sweet, but it's also very deep. The anime made me cry a lot. I don't doubt that the manga will make me cry. Maybe I might just listen to the soundtrack in the background. Yeah, I really miss the soundtrack. I really miss everything about the anime. Oh, one day I might just rewatch the anime, but I definitely want to read the manga. I want to experience the story in manga form before doing that eventually. So I guess it's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the blue heart emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzelbooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also GOODREADS. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.